Man, I was literally about to put my phone down and go for a run this morning when I saw a notification pop up that First Take was going live with a segment about the Las Vegas Raiders defense. And normally I wouldn't stop my entire routine for a Raiders segment because, let's be honest, most of the time when the national media talks about the Raiders, it's either making fun of them or it's some surface level take that doesn't really go anywhere. But something about the graphic they were showing caught my eye. It had Budda Baker's face next to a Raiders helmet and the words "perfect fit" in big bold letters underneath. And I thought, okay, I need to see this. So I sat back down, turned the volume up, and what I watched for the next 20 minutes was genuinely one of the most well thought out, well argued segments about the Raiders that I've ever seen on national television. And by the end of it, I wasn't just convinced that Budda Baker to the Raiders makes sense. I was convinced that it might be the single most important move this franchise can make this entire offseason. More important than the Kirk Cousins signing, more important than drafting Fernando Mendoza, more important than anything else they've done or will do. And I know that's a bold statement, but let me walk you through exactly what was said on that show today, and you can judge for yourself. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything, that like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly the biggest way to support this content. Every single like pushes this further, so hit it now. So the segment starts with Stephen A. Smith standing up, which you know means he's about to go off, and he looks directly at the camera and says, "I want to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, and I want to talk about why this team is still missing the one thing that separates pretenders from contenders." And then he pauses for effect because that's what Stephen A does. And he goes, "Leadership, defensive leadership, the kind of leadership that makes everybody around you better, the kind of leadership that holds people accountable. The kind of leadership that changes the entire energy of a defense the moment you walk onto the field, and the player who provides that more than anyone else available in the NFL right now is Budda Baker." And bro, when he said that, I felt it in my chest, because he's absolutely right. The Raiders have been adding pieces all off season. They've been signing guys, trading for guys, preparing for the draft, but what they haven't done is add that alpha presence in the secondary. That guy who walks into the huddle and everybody listens. That guy who communicates the adjustments before the snap, who sees what the offense is trying to do before they do it, who makes sure everybody's in the right position before the ball is even snapped. And Budda Baker is that guy. Now let me tell you what the panel said about why Baker specifically is such a perfect fit for what the Raiders are trying to build, because this is where the conversation went from being just another hot take to being a genuinely insightful football discussion. One of the analysts broke down the Raiders' defensive personnel and pointed out something that I think a lot of fans have been overlooking. He said the Raiders' secondary right now has some talent. They traded for Taron Johnson to play the nickel. They resigned Eric Stokes. They've got Jeremy Chin. But when you look at the safety position specifically, when you look at the back end of that defense, there's a massive hole. Isaiah Palamu is more of a strong safety, a box player who comes down and plays near the line of scrimmage. Tristan McCullum is primarily a special teams contributor. And there's nobody on the roster right now who can play that deep center field role, that free safety position where you're the last line of defense, where you're reading the quarterback's eyes, where you're covering the deep half and making sure nothing gets over the top. And he said without that player, without that deep safety who can anchor the back end of your defense, everything else falls apart. Your cornerbacks play scared because they know there's nobody behind them if they get beat. Your linebackers play tight because they know they have to protect the deep middle instead of attacking the line of scrimmage. Your edge rushers become less effective because the quarterback knows he can just throw it deep if the rush gets close. Everything is connected, and the safety position is the keystone that holds it all together. And that's when Shannon Sharpe jumped in and started talking about what makes Budda Baker different from every other safety in the NFL. And this is the part that really opened my eyes, because Shannon played in the league and he understands the nuances of what a safety does in a way that most media personalities don't. He said Budda Baker isn't just a free safety. He's not just a box safety. He's not just a blitzer. He's all of those things in one player. And the reason that's so valuable is because modern NFL offenses are designed to identify what the defense is doing pre-snap and then exploit it. If the offense sees a single high safety, they run certain routes to attack the areas of the field that a single high defense leaves open. If they see two high safeties, they run different schemes to attack those vulnerabilities. But when you have a player like Budda Baker who can play single high, who can play two high, who can come down into the box, who can blitz off the edge, who can cover tight ends and slot receivers and running backs out of the backfield, the offense can never get a clear read on what the defense is doing because Baker can line up anywhere. He can show one thing before the snap and then do something completely different after it. That kind of versatility makes the entire defense unpredictable, which is the single most important quality a defense can have in today's NFL. And then the conversation turned to the specific challenges the Raiders face in the AFC West. And this is where it got really practical and really specific. One of the analysts said, look at the quarterbacks the Raiders have to play 4 times a year minimum. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And whatever Denver is going to do at quarterback, those are 3 division opponents, and 2 of them have elite quarterbacks who can absolutely shred a defense that doesn't have a quality safety. And he said the Raiders cannot afford to play Mahomes and Herbert twice a year each without having a safety who can match their ability to read defenses and make quick decisions. Mahomes especially is the kind of quarterback who will eat you alive if your safety is a half step slow in his read, if he's a half second late in his rotation, if he doesn't understand the offensive concept that's being run against him. Budda Baker has the football IQ to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes. He has the experience. He has the instincts. He's the kind of safety who can be in the right place at the right time against even the best quarterbacks in football. And for the Raiders, playing in the AFC West, having that kind of player at safety isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Stephen A. then made a point that I think was incredibly important for understanding the bigger picture of what the Raiders are trying to do this offseason. He said Tom Brady and Pete Carroll didn't come to Las Vegas to build a team that's okay. They didn't come to build a team that competes for a wild card spot. They came to build a team that dominates. A team that imposes its will physically. A team that plays tough, aggressive, physical football. And he said, if you look at every great defense that Pete Carroll has been associated with throughout his career, going back to the Seahawks Legion of Boom days, what was the common thread? It was a dominant safety. It was that player at the back end of the defense who could do everything. Who could cover, who could hit, who could blitz, who could communicate, who could lead. Earl Thomas was that guy in Seattle. Cam Chancellor was that guy. Those players defined what the Seahawks defense was. And he said the Raiders right now don't have that player. They don't have their Earl Thomas. They don't have their Cam Chancellor. But Budda Baker could be that player. He could be the guy who defines what this Raiders defense is all about. And when Stephen A. said that, you could see the light bulb go off for the other people on the panel because the comparison was so apt. The Raiders under Pete Carroll want to be a physical, intimidating defense that makes opposing offenses uncomfortable, and Budda Baker is the most physically intimidating safety in the NFL. He hits like a linebacker. He tackles like a linebacker. He plays every single snap like his life depends on it, and that mentality, that energy, that physicality is exactly what the Raiders need to set the tone for the kind of defense they want to be. And then the panel got into something that I think is maybe the most underrated aspect of this entire conversation, which is what Budda Baker does for the rest of the Raiders defense from a scheme standpoint. Because one of the analysts broke down how having a truly versatile safety changes the play calling for the defensive coordinator. He said right now, the Raiders defensive coordinator is limited in what he can call because the safety position doesn't give him the flexibility to disguise coverages and show different looks pre-snap. But with Budda Baker, the play sheet opens up completely. You can run cover 1 and have Baker as the deep free safety. You can run cover 3 and have Baker play the deep middle third. You can run cover 2 and have Baker play one of the deep halves. You can bring Baker down into the box and play him as an extra linebacker against the run. You can blitz Baker off the edge or up the middle. You can put Baker in man coverage against the opposing team's tight end or slot receiver. The possibilities are endless. And the more things you can do with your safety, the more things you can do with your defense as a whole, because everything flows from the safety position. The coverages the corners play are determined by where the safety is. The responsibilities the linebackers have are determined by where the safety is. Even the way the defensive line rushes the passer is affected by what the coverage behind them looks like. So by upgrading the safety position with a player as versatile as Budda Baker, you're not just upgrading one position, you're upgrading the entire defense. One of the analysts then made a comparison that really drove the point home. He said, think about what the Raiders defense looked like last year when they were at their worst. Think about the games where they got torched through the air, where receivers were running wide open down the seam, where tight ends were catching passes in the middle of the field with nobody within 10 yards of them. And then think about why that was happening. It was happening because the safety play wasn't good enough. The deep coverage wasn't there. The communication wasn't there. The instincts weren't there, and opposing offenses exploited it mercilessly. Now imagine those same plays, those same offensive concepts being run against a defense that has Budda Baker at safety. Instead of the receiver being wide open down the seam, Baker is right there in the passing lane because he read the quarterback's eyes and broke on the ball before the receiver even made his cut. Instead of the tight end catching it in the open field and running for a first down, Baker is closing the gap and making a tackle at the catch point because his anticipation and closing speed are elite. Instead of the offense moving the ball down the field at will, they're punting 3 and out because Baker's presence has taken away their favorite plays and forced them into uncomfortable situations. That's the difference one player can make at the safety position. And that's the difference Budda Baker would make for the Raiders. And then to close out the segment, Stephen A. brought it all back to the theme of identity. He said every great NFL team has an identity. The Chiefs' identity is offensive brilliance led by Mahomes. The Ravens' identity is physical, run-heavy football led by Lamar Jackson. The 49ers' identity is scheme versatility and talent depth. And what's the Raiders' identity right now? He said honestly, the Raiders don't have one yet. They're still figuring it out. They're still in the process of building what they want to be. But with a player like Budda Baker, the identity starts to take shape. The identity becomes a tough, physical, aggressive defense that hits you in the mouth and doesn't stop hitting you for 60 minutes. The identity becomes a defense that's smart, that's disciplined, that's in the right position on every play because the safety at the back end is making sure of it. The identity becomes a team that opposing offenses are afraid to play because they know that no matter what they try, there's a safety back there who's gonna make their life miserable. And honestly, that last point is what stuck with me the most. Because for the last decade, the Raiders haven't had a defensive identity. They've had individual players who have been good, like Max Crosby and others, but they haven't had an identity as a defense. They haven't had that cohesive, unified, everybody's on the same page mentality that separates the good defenses from the great ones. And Budda Baker brings that. He brings it with his play. He brings it with his communication. He brings it with his leadership. He brings it with his intensity and his effort and his refusal to take a single play off. That's the kind of player who doesn't just improve a defense statistically. He transforms it culturally. He changes the standard of what's acceptable. He makes everybody around him play harder and smarter and with more passion because they see what he's doing on every single snap and they don't want to be the weak link. They don't want to be the guy who lets the team down while Budda Baker is out there giving everything he's got. So yeah, I'm completely sold on this. Budda Baker to the Las Vegas Raiders is the move that changes everything. It fills the biggest hole on the roster. It gives the defense the leadership and versatility it desperately needs. It provides the coaching staff with a weapon that can be deployed in countless different ways. It makes the secondary better. It makes the linebackers better. It makes the pass rush more effective. It changes the identity of the entire franchise. And it sends a message to the rest of the AFC West that the Raiders are done being a pushover. They're done being the team that everybody circles on the schedule as a guaranteed win. They're building something real, something tough, something that's going to be a problem for every single team they face. And Budda Baker is the centerpiece of that transformation. So Raiders Nation, what do you think? Is Baker the answer for this defense? Let me know in the comments and make sure you subscribe because we've got a lot more content coming as we get closer to the draft and free agency continues to unfold. This is going to be a wild ride and I don't want you to miss a second of it.